resigned or you intend to resign, if approved, whether you would resign. Two, in relation to the question that the Deputy Speaker has asked on AI. This is a question from a Kenyan living in Finland who tells me he recently, and he also comes from Kiambu, he recently read an article in one of the newspapers in Helsinki on the working conditions that are described as equivalent to modern slave labor, where American big tech companies are using young Kenyans, especially to do what is described as harmful, removing what is described as harmful content or crude content on Facebook, on TikTok, Instagram, on largely main social media platforms. I say that they ensure that they review Facebook, TikTok, and Instagram to ensure that these important platforms are not filled with hate speech or incitement to violence. We watch murders, executions, child sexual abuse, and rape, often for more than 8 hours a day. And we are paid less than $2 an hour for it. The workers described as part of the excerpt from that article. And therefore, would want to hear what you would intend to do as Cabinet Secretary now in charge of ICT. One, to protect these young Kenyans from being exploited by the big tech companies working on AI from the US and other developed countries. And two, to also protect these young Kenyans from the harmful effects of the content that they watch, that they have to go through as they work. And you know, mental health is indeed a big issue and has been rated as one of the big issues, especially with those working in the tech space in the country. And probably part of it is out of this engagement with content that they are finding online as they work. What would you do to protect them? Lastly, on revenue assurance, calls dropping Kenyans telcos. Continue to work with, we all work with phone companies or telcos that call drops are very frequent, and nobody ever compensates Kenyans for the call drops, what you would intend to do. Plus, because that is a situation where these telcos are stealing from Kenyans as we make calls. But the same telcos also steal from government in terms of revenue, because we have a system where KRA cannot tell how much airtime you have used, because it's a self-reporting system with the telcos. What revenue assurance systems would you put in place, probably from CA, Communications Authority, to ensure that CA has a view of the amount of data, the amount of airtime that Safaricom and all the other telcos are selling to Kenyans, because there is theft both ways, from Kenyans and also from the revenue authorities.
Nominee, you can record the next questions. Juney.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, through you, I would like to ask the nominee, Honorable William Kabogo Gitau, that we are looking here at the suitability, his suitability to be the Cabinet Secretary for ICT. In that regard, having been a governor, member of parliament, and having run a huge county like Kiambu, I have no doubt in his capacity. But these are the questions I want to ask. In 2010, Honorable Chairman, the late Professor George Saitoti, then the Minister for Internal Security, named in Parliament persons suspected to be drug traffickers in connection with alleged illegal trade, drug trade, and who are under investigation. Among the persons that were named, Honorable Speaker, the name of Honorable Kabogo appeared on the list. Can you make it clear to this committee and the great people of this country who are watching you today, did you or have you ever been suspected or charged with the drug trafficking? Second question is, this is a simple one, during your tenure as a governor of Mohhamed, I mean of Kiambu. No, Kichangi, do you come over? Yeah, it's Kiambu. You have snapped, they say many times, summons from the Senate. Now, as a Cabinet Secretary, you will be answerable to Parliament. These are, other than the appointing authority, these are your next employer, second employers. You will appear here every day to answer questions on ICT and those kind of things. Will you be able to appear before the Senate and the National Assembly at any time that are required? And lastly, people also describe you as somebody who is they say tough-headed, bordering arrogance, highest level of high-handedness. How are you going to be compatible now with being a CS with this kind of job that requires a lot of humility? And looking at your CV, lastly, I went through, you have not indicated how many children you have. Can you share with the committee how many children you have, Honorable Kabogo?
Go on. In Africa, we don't count children, so you can ignore that.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. First, I appreciate the fact that Honorable Juney has said he has no doubt I have the capabilities of becoming Minister for ICT. I thank you. Party leader, Mheshimiwa Ichung'wa, is talking about working conditions and big tech companies. Like I said before, Mr. Speaker, it is the use of regulatory frameworks and legislative work that can help us deal with these big tech issues. And the way they take advantage of, especially African countries, in terms of call drops. I have been a victim of very many call drops by Safaricom itself. And the minute you call them and ask why is this happening, they say it is technology, it is these days, you know, frequencies, all these stories. As Minister for ICT, if I'm confirmed, Mr. Speaker, this will become a thing of the past. We should be able to ask CA to be able to get call logs and determine how much call drops each caller has and what the company needs to do to compensate drop times. On the issue of hate speech and harmful content, again, this is a matter of every country having its own regulations. It is true if you look at TikTok, you look at Facebook and X, you will find all sorts of pornography, actually even available to children. This is a situation where our regulators should be able to engage these providers or the owners of these apps, Facebook, TikTok and others, to know how they can be regulated.
Nominee, it is not about the regulator. If you are approved, you'll be the minister providing policy direction.
Exactly,
That's
Mr.
what
Speaker.
Ichung'wa wants
So
to
my
know.
first directive to CA is to be able to get to know how this can be regulated. And we have technical people who have experience, Mr. Speaker, on how these things can be done. I should be able to sit with them on the first or second day of my term in office to make sure that there is a direct and clear way of dealing with these problems. So, Mr. Speaker, on the issue of exploitation, I have addressed that. Perfect and harmful content, again, it is a matter of great concern how much bad content is available on these platforms, and it is worldwide. We have seen situations where other countries have stopped certain platforms in operating, like for example, the discussion now in the US, where TikTok is supposed to be banned from using the American airspace. I should be able to get to the bottom of these things and see that the Kenyan content is good for consumption for underage and also other users. If I go to, I'm not sure whether I got the third question from...
He asked if you are still chairman of Tujibebe party.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I am not a chairman of Jibebe now. The minute I was nominated by the president, I resigned the following day, and I think a copy of that is in the bundle of documents that I have given. From the Honorable Juney, a question I have dealt with all my life since that fateful day when Professor Saitoti, the late, dropped names of MPs as suspected drug dealers. I want to say here on record, Mr. Speaker, I have never, ever dealt with drugs of any kind all my life. Mr. Speaker, this
Not even Panadol?
Mr. Speaker, I do not imagine that Junet Mohhamed was asking about Panadol. I have some in my pocket if it's just Panadol. But I know he's talking about hard.
You know what he
He's
meant.
talking about hard drugs, cocaine, and the rest. And this is a very disturbing subject, Mr. Speaker. But I invite Kenyans also to have a look at the dossier that Mr. Saitoti brought to the House. It's a dossier such that, Mr. Speaker, if it was given to Inspector Mwala, it would not pass Mr. Mwala's table for a script. If, Mr. Speaker, at that point in time, and records speak here in this House, I fought vigorously the tabling of our names without a leave of the House, because the rules are such that if you are discussing the conduct of an MP, you need to move a substantive motion. But for that particular one, it went through smoothly as planned. But my point here, Mr. Speaker, the government or agencies, the police, did a thorough investigation, and they gave a temporary report a month later, which was tabled and is part of the records of this House, and they found that I was not culpable. I had never been involved in drug trafficking, and I had never been a driver of the Honorable Mao, as that dossier had said. I actually said, Mr. Speaker, on the floor of this House, that there is no need of anyone trying to do extradition proceedings to get me to travel to the US to answer these charges. I offered myself. They give me a one-way visa, and I'll take myself to any part of the world to answer charges of drugs. It's never happened. So the authors of that dossier probably didn't get exactly what they wanted, but what they got is messing with people's names. And that is the situation it is today. Mr. Speaker, it has continued to happen. People talking about, you will find some of us are named Pablo, all those names. But the truth be told is that I did take some people to court. If you remember, there was a program by Standard called something Mihadarati by Mheshimiwa from Nyali. And I did take them to court. It's taken long, about 8 or 9 years. But finally, I got judgment against them, and I was paid a little bit of money. But circulation is still happening. This is something I am bound to live with for the rest of my life. But I do not do drugs. Thank you. That was a tough one. Yeah?
You've not answered one. He also asked you that when you are governor of Kiambu, you snubbed invitations and summons to attend.
I'm going there.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. You know, it was
the perception of being high-handed.
It is. Pardon?
Go on and answer the questions.
Yes.
Yes.
In the beginning, when governors were being called to Senate, there was a general feeling that we should not come to Senate as an independent government. But when it was clear through court decisions that governors would appear, we started appearing, and I want to be on record here, Mr. Speaker. I came to this Senate House to answer questions of senators. For 3 consecutive years, Kiambu had appeared. As a matter of fact, I came to the clerk of that committee and I said they can ask the chair, I think it was Professor Nyang Nyong then, that should any county be invited to the Senate and they do not appear, Kiambu can appear, it's just next door in short notice, even half an hour. And that's how we managed to go through our audit queries for Kiambu for 3 years. So I should be able to appear before the House of Parliament, both the Senate and the National Assembly, to answer any questions that may arise, and also carry along the staff of the ministry. Sometimes you ask questions. I've been to this house. Sometimes you ask questions and the minister is given questions by technocrats to bring to the house and they're never accepted. I should be able to come with the PS or whoever it is and tell them, now you need to answer this question because it's being asked by MPs who represent the people. It's the people asking. So I will honor invitations to appear. What was the other part?
Are you arrogant,
Yes.
hard-headed, and high-handed?
Mr. Speaker, I have a very serious face, just like yourself. And that may sometimes be confused to be, but I'm very straightforward. And I do not beat about the bush. I say things as they are. And this is where people wonder whether doing things right or doing the right things is the thing to do. I believe in doing things right, but doing them right. So that sometimes it appears. I have a very strong personality on putting things in order. And that is why I was able to bring order to Kiambu, a very difficult county.
How come they rejected you after one term?
Mr. Speaker, that is a long discussion you and I would have because you know how elections are done in this country.
Yes, Juney.
Mr. Speaker, the nominee has answered by saying he is not high-headed, he is not arrogant because he has a very serious face. So does he use his face and his bald head to scare people?
Speaker, maybe because there's also a question CS nominee did not answer, but probably just in defense of him, Honorable Speaker, on that, or without being seen to defend him, from a question by my colleague Juney, is probably a character trait of people from Kiambu of being straightforward, saying it as it is, and we are at times misconstrued to be arrogant. But that's just the way we are, Honorable Speaker, those of us who come from Kiambu.
So is that what you said, Leader, the burial of the mother of the Speaker?
Honorable Speaker, CS, my question on the big tech companies is how they're exploiting, and in fact, that article spoke of the work that is usually done by students, housewives, and groups of people who are in a weak